In the wings, Linda Burroughs Glover, Executive Dispute Resolution Specialist in Washington's Office of Workplace Manager with the Conflict Management and Prevention Center of the U.S. Forest Service. She has worked within the dispute resolution community since 1998, resolving cases by using mediation, facilitation, coaching, and training. Linda started her federal career with 14 years at the National Weather Service. She has won the Department of Commerce Bronze Award twice for her facilitation efforts within the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Linda has now been with the Forest Service for 18 years, during which she has worked to resolve over 3,000 cases, ranging from consultations to climate assessments. Linda is a certified mediator and certified practitioner of various diagnostic tools. She loves working within her community to support others, especially those who have suffered trauma. Linda, thank you so much for your time today. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm so sorry for the delay. I had a little bit of a glitch with my some technical issues on my side. So I just apologize. And then I came in as a different person, which was very interesting. So, so Laura's a really pretty name. So that was exciting for a few minutes there. So, so thank you so much for your patience and your grace while I got adjusted to a new link and a new name and all those exciting things. So, so again, thank you so much for having me again. I'm going to share my screen. I have a presentation I'd like to share with you. So let me just pull that up for you. Hopefully that'll be a little bit seamless, because as you all know, I'm not the most technically savvy person in the whole wide world. Let me make sure this is coming through here. Go to the slides. All right. Can you see it full screen here? Let me go to make sure it's on the slideshow as well. So you can see it full screen. How's that? Look good on your end? Can you see it okay? Okay, perfect. All right. So I wanted to give you an overview of the Conflict Management Prevention Center, the CMPC. I know that my colleague Anthony was with you earlier this week, and so he gave you a little bit of a glimpse into what we do and what that might look like. And so I know that Anthony's a ball of energy, so I hope that you enjoyed his presentation. I wish I could have been there because it's always fun when we're together. So I hope you enjoyed that part and getting to know him. So this is a little bit maybe deeper into what we do as a program, as a center, as kind of an organizational unit. So again, a little bit about me. So I am the Conflict Management and Prevention Center manager for the Washington office. And as you know, we met Anthony, he's out there on the West Coast, right? So he's in Region 6. And so I'm here on the East Coast with the Washington office. And so my program area, again, is Washington office detached, law enforcement and investigations, and the enterprise program. And so that's, again, essentially my program area. And we'll talk a little bit more about the other center managers and where they're located in just a minute. Again, thank you for having me. So my objectives today really is to introduce myself, introduce the center, discuss what we do a little bit in detail, talk about conflict a little bit as well, how CMPC can be utilized, a suite of services, how they can be accessed, what it means to engage in meaningful and productive work to resolve conflict. We want to talk about ADR, alternative dispute resolution. That's that umbrella of techniques, that are utilized to resolve conflict. We want to talk about that. The benefits of that, how to stay focused, how to stay positive, how to focus on things that are within your control, even during the most challenging of circumstances. So we're going to be addressing all of those things in the next hour together. So what are we? Who are we in CMPC? We are, again, as you see, a service-wide program, right? We are called a center. So essentially, there is a CMPC manager that's located, each of us, one of us, in every single region across the Forest Service, right? So, and that's new. Before, maybe just a couple of years before, we were really stretched thin, right? So we were sharing program areas and regions among maybe a couple of us, maybe even 2 or 3 of us, which was really difficult. So right now, we're fully staffed, up and running, one person and in each region, which is still pretty difficult. As you can imagine, with 40,000, 30,000 people, it's still pretty tough. But again, there's a CMPC manager located in every single region. And essentially what we do is we are that first stop, right? We are that first person that you come to when there might be an issue. One person once called us kind of conflict triage. We are that first person you can come to talk about what you might be experiencing in your world. To have that person to be a sounding board, to help you assess the situation, to work through maybe those initial first thoughts about what's happening, again, in your world, and to have a neutral look through it, kind of that lens of what could be happening and what options are available to you within our center, within CMPC, as far as the resources available through ADR, like mediation or facilitation or coaching or training. And if there are things perhaps that are outside of our scope, we'll also make sure to give you an idea of what resources could be available to you, again, outside of CMPC or outside of, or maybe even within WIPO, but outside of CMPC and even beyond, right? Even beyond WIPO, right? And that's the Work Environment and Performance Office, right? Just to, kind of put that into context. So even beyond that, right? If it's within civil rights or within human resources. So we'll make sure that you have every possible option and resource available to you when you leave that initial conversation with us. So that is essentially what we do in a really quick little nutshell. Again, it's that initial consultation or that very initial conflict triage. And we are available to all Forest Service employees. So anyone can come to us and have that conversation, right, about what's happening, what's going on, what are those suite of services that are available, what are those other resources that could be utilized, that initial consultation and any of those other resources as well. We're there to assist any and all Forest Service employees. There's a little bit of a caveat, as you'll see there, is that with contractors, there's an added step. We can still assist with contractors, especially if there's a conflict that involves a Forest Service employee and a contractor, or just even a contractor perhaps that's working for the Forest Service. That added step is that we have to make sure that we have the permission of that contracting office, perhaps their human resources office or perhaps their ADR office, to make sure that we're allowed to, work with that employee, right? So we just have to make sure that there's just that added step of given granted, permissions to work within those boundaries. But it's worked, it's been effective. It's just maybe another step in the process. So what is the goal of CMPC? It's really twofold. There initially, in the very, very early stages when we were first created way back many years ago, it was a very reactive program, right? Meaning we would come into play when there was a conflict, right? We would come in and offer mediation services and facilitative services when there was a conflict, on the ground. And we are still that. We are still a part of that, and we want to be a part of that. And within that, we hope to be timely. We hope to be cost effective. We want to be that resource for all Forest Service employees, right? So if there's a conflict, we're there to help and assist you through that. Absolutely. So there is that reactive part of us and who we are in CMPC. But a big part of us right now is this proactive side. And this proactive side has become this larger side of CMPC, which is very, very exciting. It's a new trend that's emerging that we're seeing. And you've probably heard us say this. It's growing, and again, it's something that we're really excited to see. And what this means is that what we're seeing is that employees are coming to us wanting to be empowered and equipped with tools to be able to navigate conflict on their own. They want to be able to work through it independently of us, but they want to come to us for that education, right? They want to come to us to learn what it looks like, what it feels like. Again, with that empowerment to go out and try it on their own and figure it out again on their own and work through it again independently. And that is exactly what we want folks to do. We want folks to go out and work through it, right? First, initially with their colleagues and with their supervisor, with their peers, and see, if they're able to navigate conflict. And then us be there to help, us be there to guide and to coach and maybe mentor, when we're needed. And should that conflict escalate, then we come in and, be that neutral third party to help. Maybe facilitate the rest of the way through. But it's really exciting to see that proactive work. Another element of that proactive work is, again, a lot of that education. We're doing a lot of webinars, we're doing a lot of training. And what we're trying to do, again, a part of that is increase the conflict competencies of our employees and our leaders. And so again, it's that empowerment part of it that's been extremely exciting to see, and it's catching on. It's great. So what is conflict at its very core? It's when we see things differently, right? We have an incredibly diverse workforce right now. For the first time in our history, we have 5 generations working together, which is incredible, right? It's what we want to see. It's what makes our workforce so rich and meaningful and just it's beautiful. It brings this diversity of thought. It brings all of these unique and beautiful ideas to our workplace, right? What it also brings is the different ways we look at things and the different ways we do things and the different places we come from, right? And when there's differences, sometimes we just come together a little bit differently. And with that, we have to kind of work through things a little bit slower. We have to talk to each other. We have to kind of just take a moment, process that. And when we do that respectfully, and with empathy and with compassion, it's an opportunity for us to really get to know each other and build, relationships, get a better understanding of each other. So yes, conflict can be really difficult, right? What we know about conflict is also inevitable, right? But it's not necessarily a negative thing, right? It's only negative based on what reaction you have to it, right? So if you react negatively to it and you go about it in a really confrontational way, you're probably going to get negative results, right? But if you come into it with an open mind, again, with that empathy and that compassion, with a quest to understand, with curiosity to know more about that person, the likelihood of you coming out with a better relationship, maybe with new ideas, maybe with some innovation even towards your work is really likely. So it actually can result into something really positive. Again, if you enter into that conversation with curiosity, respect, empathy, and compassion, again, with that wanting to know that other person. So it's not always bad, even though that there's that, that negative connotation with conflict. It actually can be a really, really good thing. What are the types of conflicts that we see in the force service? Almost always. And Anthony would always say, I would say 90% of the times, and he's always going to say, no, it's almost like 99% of the time. And he's probably right. That is always based in communication, right? Some form of lack of communication where there's just a breakdown, or it's just not happening. There's been cases where I've had folks call me and say, I haven't spoken to my supervisor in 6 weeks. And I asked, well, what's happening? Why? There's a lack of either opportunity, whether it's workload, whether it's just time zones, whether it's because of this current environment that we're working in, it can be challenging. You're on, Teams, chatting instead of actually talking and communicating. So it's just sometimes this lack of communication, this lack of connection. Or there's this miscommunication, right? Where there are these assumptions, where there is this misunderstanding because of either tone or, again, you're on Teams and this chat can look and feel very, very different. Sometimes just a missed comment can look and change the complete context of a sentence, just one missed comma, right? So miscommunication can oftentimes plays a huge part in this miscommunication, this different ideas of what happened. It's huge in conflict, right? When there's a miscommunication or inappropriate communication, when there's a joke that maybe was meant to be funny and it just didn't land the way either the person intended. Maybe there wasn't meant to be harm, but it did harm, so it's that inappropriate communication as well too. But all of those things kind of in that realm of communication often is exactly what we fall into that conflict space, right? So it's a big one. It probably is in that 95 to 99% range. It's always kind of starts there. Then there's also those interpersonal disputes where there's just this different way of doing things. Like I talked about earlier, we just come into the workplace just doing things a little bit differently. It may be personality based. It might just be the way our behaviors show up in the workplace, just look and feel differently. And so we have to kind of talk those things through on, how do we work? Why does it look a little bit different? And how can we be more effective in that space? Sometimes it's performance. We'll talk about supervisors and their expectations, employees and their expectations, and making sure they meet. Sometimes there's disciplinary disputes where the employee and the supervisor, again, want to make sure that after, and let me make sure I express this really clearly. In CMPC, we can't prevent a disciplinary action, right? We don't have the authority to do that. But what we can do is have conversations maybe after the fact about, how do we prevent this from happening again? What happened? Let's get back on a more positive path, right? We can talk about here and now and moving forward. So sometimes we'll have conversations around that, or process-oriented conversations. How can we become more efficient, more effective in our work? What does that look like? And sometimes that's when a whole team is involved, which is really interesting. That's more like a facilitation. So it's really interesting to do that. What you'll note here is that it's not appropriate when there's workplace violence type of conversations, if there's a threat of a workplace violence situation, or if there are concerns around sexual misconduct. Those types of situations are more appropriate for the anti-harassment complaint process. We would never want to put a victim in a situation where we're forcing a conversation with their offender. We wouldn't want that person to feel re-victimized or afraid or uncomfortable in kind of a mediation type of situation. So it just wouldn't be the appropriate platform for that conversation. Okay. So what is the role of a neutral? So all of us as CMPC managers are neutrals. We are third parties and we protect our neutrality very much. It's important for you to trust us in that capacity. And it's something that is critically important to us and to be viewed that way as well. And anybody that works within our cadre they're also neutral third parties as well. And many of us have small cadres of collateral duty mediators or facilitators as well to help us make sure that we're meeting the needs of our customers. So what we'll do in that role, in consultation or in coaching, as we talked about in the very first part of this, we are there to hear you, to listen to you when you first call, to talk about the situation that you might be encountering, how it's impacting you. It's an opportunity for you just to vent. It's a safe space to do that. we are not mandatory reporters. So you can just come, and unless there is a threat to harm or to others or self, that information stays just with us. It is just between you and me, right? So it is a place where you can come and just talk and just vent. We can be that sounding board, again, in that very safe space, right? If we do get to a place where there's a mediation or facilitation, we are also that third party that can help with writing agreements or settlements and things of that nature. We're also trained and doing in training and all types of different things in that suite of services we'll talk about in just a minute. Just know that under USDA regulations, we must be certified in all of those roles, whether it's mediation, whether it's facilitation, whether it's training. Those are strict requirements that all of us must maintain on a yearly basis. So we're all certified practitioners of those services. So where do our neutral resources come from? And they come from a myriad of places. All of us as CNPC managers here are in-house, right? So across the region, Forest Service wide, all the managers are in-house full-time, which is great. So you can reach us at any time. So that's critical. Our collateral duty mediators and facilitators that I mentioned, those folks are essentially pulled in kind of on an ad hoc basis, right? When we need them. And as I mentioned earlier, we are stretched pretty thin because there's just one of us located in each of the regions across the Forest Service. So it can be a bit tricky. So there's times when we do bring in those collateral duty resources. And again, that's kind of on an ad hoc need. Sometimes we'll also bring in enterprise program folks, and that could be for facilitative needs. It could be for training needs. Again, when we're doing that initial assessment of what our customers need, it could be a real myriad of services. When one customer comes in, we could absolutely see that, yes, there's coaching needed, but this person also needs mediation and possibly training. And there's sometimes a whole suite of services that are needed for just one case. And so if that's needed, we could absolutely look at many resources that could be utilized for that one specific case. And so we might use enterprise program for the training and a collateral duty person for, facilitation, other USDA agencies for mediators or facilitators. So we'll be pulling on all these different resources if we need to, especially if, again, if we need to make sure it's really timely and if there's availability issues, or if there is a conflict of interest, meaning if we perhaps know this person and they want somebody outside, right, of that kind of, that group that they know, where they know us, or if maybe they're in that chain of command, right, within like our program area, or if it's a super high profile case, we'll go outside, look at other USDA agencies, shared neutrals, even the community or contractors. So we are looking at that at each and every case, assessing each customer and really carefully making sure that we're meeting the needs of every person, just really mindfully. So here are the full suite of services that we provide. As you can see, as I've mentioned earlier, that first contact where you're sharing with us what's going on in your world, how it's impacting you, what might be, and what I'm sharing, what might be available to you, that is that first initial consultation. And what it might turn into if we start talking about option building and talking about possible, resources that are available to you, that sometimes turns into conflict coaching, especially if it's ongoing. If the conversations continue and we're talking about other tools and how you might want to navigate this and how I can help and maybe guide and mentor you through that, that's absolutely conflict coaching. And sometimes there's an opportunity for us to step in and help with mediation or facilitation. That facilitation sometimes can be larger and can be a group as well. We also offer team building. Sometimes that team building can include assessments like Myers-Briggs or DISC or other types of fun, interactive and engaging assessments that bring in a lot of interesting concepts to help the team get to know each other better. And self-awareness is a big part of that too. There's group intervention, which is a little bit different. That's when there might be perhaps a conflict within a team, and we'll come in and do a little bit of a survey, understand the dynamics of the team, and come in and provide some recommendations on how the team can improve the dynamics and maybe engage and help each other a little bit to move forward past this conflict. Again, as I mentioned, there are assessments like the Myers-Briggs type indicator, where we'll include some training around that. There's DISC plus values. There's EQI, which is this new one that we're offering, which is a really great assessment that involves emotional and social intelligence with a little bit of a wellness component, which is, I think, just a fantastic new assessment that we're offering within CNPC. There's boss whispering, which is a very intensive coaching effort for folks who are struggling with gaining some self-awareness for themselves. If they have found themselves in a situation where they are kind of always in these conflict moments, and if they are receiving feedback that perhaps they are abrasive or have a more direct conversational style, boss whispering is a very intensive coaching effort that helps bring about a level of self-awareness and behavioral modification that helps road test new strategies around developing skills to help mitigate that and those perceptions around that, that directive communication style that could be impacting you and others. There's also conflict dynamics profile, which is called CDP. That's an assessment that helps you learn how you navigate conflict. It's a really fascinating, really data-driven one, which is really interesting. And there's also TKI, kind of in conjunction with CDP, which is really interesting. So we, again, have this full suite of services that are available to you individually or with a group. And we also have a full suite of training offerings that I want to show you here. I won't read through these, but you can see that we have so many training topics and offerings. I've also included the link for our SharePoint site, which has every recording I think that we've ever recorded with our monthly webinars. And I'm hoping that you're receiving or maybe soon to receive our WIPO bulletins. Those WIPO bulletins will give you an idea of what's coming up soon within CNPC, but also within mindfulness and those types of offerings as well. But it'll also give you is the most recent recording as well. So if you missed maybe the webinar that maybe just passed, it'll give you the recording in case you missed it, so you can watch it on your own time. But that link that you have in front of you also has the full list of all the CNPC webinars and the links and things that are coming up and everything there too. So these trainings can be tailored to you. They can be used in the coaching environment. They can be used in small teams or large groups. It's really interesting, and it's not limited to just these few topics. We have, again, if you look at the SharePoint site, there's a full just range of topics that are available to you as well. Okay, the benefits of ADR, and that's, again, alternative dispute resolution. First and foremost, it's confidential. And that's another just absolutely critical point. Like I mentioned earlier, neutrality. Our neutrality is something we fiercely protect. And so is confidentiality. Um, Everything that is said, it stays with us. It is, again, something that is just fiercely protected within, again, even that initial consultation at every stage of our discussions leading to any effort, whether it's mediation or team building at any stage, is absolutely protected. So I just want you to know that even when reporting, it's not reported up or reported out, or we don't go back to supervisors or anything like that. It stays with us. Again, only in the cases of if there's a threat to self or others, does it get reported out, or to somebody who needs to intervene and help. It is informal, which means that it can be just a conversation and it can stay there. It doesn't have to grow to anything else. It can just be that first conversation and only be that first conversation. If you get everything that you need from just that initial consultation, then that's it. There is no expectation or or forced need for you to go to mediation or facilitation or anything like that. So there's no expectation of that. It's just that first conversation, and that's it. You got what you need, then that's all there is. It's very informal. It's also voluntary. And it's voluntary, as you see the little asterisk, it's voluntary for peers, right? And employees. So it's not voluntary for supervisors, right? So if an employee requests ADR of their supervisor, right? I'm just using that scenario as an example. That supervisor must participate, right? That is a Forest Service policy, right? A USDA policy, in fact. However, if a peer requests ADR of their peer, right, or of their colleague, that is something that's absolutely voluntary, right? That's something we can work through and talk through, but the other person does not have to engage if they don't want to, right? So that's strictly voluntary, right? Okay. It's cost effective. As I mentioned earlier, the resources that we use typically in-house, whether it's full-time or collateral duty, we typically pull from resources inside the Forest Service. So very cost effective. It's timely. We always respond within 24 hours. And then we try to get services on the ground to you as quickly as we can based on your availability. So again, that's that pulling of resources, try to get to you as quickly as we can. We really impress upon you that, it is important to see the full scope of the issue, to understand all perspectives, your part in it, their part in it, and understand that there's, accountability, that there's all of us have to work together to get to resolution, right? I'm assisting as a neutral, but all the parties have to really work together. Within ADR, the control, which is what's beautiful about ADR, is really it's in your hands. It's within your control to get to resolution. So there's really power in that, and I hope that you feel that empowerment in that. This is also ADR and any kind of services within CMPC is not a replacement for any other forms of redress, which means that if for example, you go through a mediation or a facilitated discussion, right, which is a much more informal conversation, right? It's kind of like that first step before mediation. And for example, if it's not successful, right, it didn't reach resolution, you're still feeling as if there's more work that needs to be done. You can still file a grievance should you need to. You can still file an EEO complaint. You can still go to the AH program. It doesn't stop you from seeking those other avenues to find resolution. So this is not a barrier to any of those other resources. This is just that first attempt at early resolution, right? It's almost what we used to call is like an early intervention, if you will, right? But it doesn't stop you. It's just that first tool to try to assist you. Okay. And what we hope is that this is a valuable learning experience, right? If nothing else, right? Because there's times where folks will walk away from a session like this and say, I didn't really get the full resolution that I was expecting, right? But I learned so much. I learned about myself. I learned about the other person. I gained from just having the conversation. The conversation itself is what I needed, right? And maybe in itself, that was resolution, right? It wasn't really what I envisioned, right? But the conversation itself is exactly what needed to happen, right? Because I learned something from that. I learned something that I did not know. And it's what I needed. I needed to hear what I needed to hear in those moments. And so that's what we hope is at least gained in those really meaningful conversations where sometimes a third party can get you to those spaces where you can't get sometimes on your own, sometimes, right? We also want you to consider when you're addressing conflict, whether it's with us as a third party neutral or whether we're, empowering you with some tools to go try it on your own. We want you to always remain really future focused, right? Because oftentimes we get really stuck in what's happened to us, right? And we carry that baggage, for a long time. We suffer in that and we carry that pain for a very long time. What I want you to consider is once you've spoken with us, once you've talked to us and worked with us, especially if you've worked with that other party too, is to try to leave that behind and just look towards the future on what we can do from this point forward, right? Let's move forward. We can't change what's happened, but we can absolutely work towards changing how we can operate in the future, right? What's also so important is maintaining your health, practicing self-care during these difficult conflict situations, because I have seen conflict take such a toll on folks, right? Because it is so difficult to navigate those situations, right? Especially if you're doing it on your own and you don't know where to go. It can really weigh on you. And what I want you to think about in those moments is to take care of yourself, right? Check in with your doctor, whether it's your, practitioner, your general practitioner, or if it's a mental health professional, whatever that might look like. If it's, with meditation, or you're going to, with yoga, or you're going for walks, but take care of you while you're working with us, so that you maintain your health, be the best you, because it'll end better, right? If you are well, right? You must be well, right? And I also want you to maintain your professionalism throughout this. And I know there's times too where it's hard, if your buttons are being pushed, and there's times where you might be feeling really triggered. And listen, we all have those triggers. We all have those moments where, you might feel tested and you might feel incredibly challenged. You might feel hurt. You might feel damaged. You might feel undervalued or underappreciated or any of those things. What I want you to remember is that, you are a professional, and your future, right, matters here in the organization. So maintain that regardless of how that other person, might be interacting with you. You maintain you. You maintain your character, your professionalism, regardless of what somebody else is doing. And let us help you with that. Let us help you with that. Let us give you tools and empower you to be the best you in those moments. And don't worry about that. Let us figure out how to help you navigate that, right? And mitigate that situation, but maintain you, right? Maintain your best you in those moments. And again, staying focused on the things that you can control. I think sometimes in those really tough moments, our minds can just go all over the place, right? We're thinking about all the possibilities, and sometimes those possibilities are out of our reach, right? We're thinking about, sometimes worst case scenarios, I want to go here, or I want them to go there. I want them to be fired, or I'm gonna leave. Or, you think about some of the worst things. And if anxiety comes into play, we really go off on these far reaching, kind of stretches. And by the way, you're human. We're human. It's normal to do that, especially when there's a high stress situation. That's okay. It's okay. It's totally normal. But come talk to us. Allow yourself a lot of grace, especially when you're going through that kind of stress. Please do that. Take a moment, count to 10 and call us. Let us talk you through it. Let's talk about some attainable goals and real options, things that are within your control, things that are within your reach, things that we can really do. Let us kind of help you figure out, kind of bring things back into perspective, right? Because everything's going to be all right. Even if it feels like it's really scary and it's not going to be okay, it's going to be okay. And we can help you kind of bring everything back into frame. And again, I want you to think about these things as opportunities for you to learn about yourself, maybe others, but also your opportunity to teach somebody about yourself, where you came from. You're going to be teaching somebody a whole lot as well. So it's an opportunity both ways. If you're willing, to do that, because I know it's not always easy, but it's absolutely an opportunity. Okay. I want to share with you your CMPC regional contacts. You'll see me there at the very top. I'm there in the DC area. Again, that's the Washington office detached, law enforcement, enterprise. Kimberly is there in region 1. You'll see Lorraine is region 2. Jenny is in Job Corps. You see Laura is region 3. Martine is at the ASC. You see Dave's up there. He is in region 4. Marquette is in region 5. Anthony. You saw Anthony earlier, region 6. Got Teresa in region 8. Trish in region 9. And then you have Christy in region 10. And then you'll see here, I put links to the CMPC SharePoint side, and also the contact points. Their contact information is also embedded in this link too. So if you want to reach out to them, you see their numbers and their email addresses as well. So whatever you might need, feel free to reach out to your regional CMPC manager. But I want to give you guys time to answer or ask any questions. I'm happy to answer them. Please feel free to unmute and join in the conversation. I invite you to please feel free, ask away. I'll check the chat too to see if I've missed anything. But yeah, feel free to unmute. Please feel free.
We have a hand from Jamil.
Yes, please. Hi, Jamil.
Hi, Linda. Well, afternoon. Is there like any scenarios where even when you go through the resolution training and so on, that they still can't come to common ground, or it's still at the same square one? Like, what do you do after that?
Yeah, those there have been moments, where that's happened, where there's been maybe a little bit additional work that's needed. It's not always perfect. There's times where we have to, almost agree to disagree, where we realize we're just very, very different people. And we see things through completely different lenses, and you know what, that's okay. That's okay. Sometimes in those moments, what we have to realize is that we decide, what is it going to look like for us to work together though, right? So we understand that we're different. right? We maybe see things through a very different lens, different perspective. We're not going to agree on that, right? We're not going to agree on how we got here. That's just not going to happen, right? But what we can agree on is what we're going to do from this point forward, right? So from this point forward, we can agree how we're going to communicate better and more effectively, how we're going to show each other respect, how we're going to develop trust, how we're going to communicate, with more respect for each other, that type of thing, right? So that's what we try to work on is, okay, what do we do from this point forward, right? Because what we don't want to do is to send them back and say, okay, just don't engage, because that's not going to work. That never works, right? Because we are going to always be, in some point, working together and crossing paths and engaging, and we want to encourage that. We want to make sure we're encouraging that in a respectful space. And we should be able to do that as professionals, right? So we have to kind of figure out together, okay, so we're different, but how can we work together more effectively? How can I show you respect? What does respect look like for you? Got it. What does respect look like for me? Okay. So how can we work together in that space? Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
It takes work. It takes work, but that's when I think a neutral is most important, is when that person can help you kind of get to that next space and define kind of the rules of engagement almost for you. And then you try it and you work together, make it work.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a question from Allegra.
Hi, Allegra.
Hi, Linda. Thanks for that presentation. So my question is, I've taken the DISC assessment and I found that super helpful in the workplace. And I'm just wondering, what's the difference between the EQI and DISC? How does that differ?
Oh, they're so different. That is so interesting. Yes. So, well, I shouldn't say like massively different, because I think with EQI, it's still very much based in behaviors, right? And like, DISC is very much about behavior. It's very much about how you show up in the workplace and what that looks like, based on these measures of like, how you make decisions and, stability, how you stabilize, all those things. The difference between the two is EQI is very much about your emotional and social intelligence, right? So it gives you this report on essentially how you are, and not so much of how you're showing up. Okay, it does go into behaviors a little bit, meaning if you have a low score or a moderate score or a high score in any of these larger components, right? Of and there are aspects of decision making and there's some problem solving. There's a little bit of an overlap, but it's more than that. It's much more introspective. It's much more reflective. It's much more about self-awareness on a very deeper level. It's much more about empathy. It's how you're connecting in your social relationships, in your interpersonal relationships, in your social environments, and your capacity to do that with EQI, right? And whether you're at this lower level where you haven't yet developed the skills or the capacity to do that, or you're at this moderate level, or where you're able to kind of a little bit, or you're very highly developed, where you're able to and have the capacity to develop relationships, maintain relationships, understand emotion, your own emotion, the emotions of others, connecting the dots of emotions, forming relationships, not only with people, but with communities. It's much more in depth in that capacity, if that makes sense. It's skills in those areas of emotional and social intelligence. And so it goes very deep, and it really encourages you to think very very deeply about your capacity in those areas and developing the skills in emotional and social intelligence. With the EQI instrument that we have, there's also a wellness component, which is unique to some EQI assessments, not all, but just some. And so it also goes into stress and your stress tolerance and your overall happiness. And if you have the capacity to be optimistic, and how you can develop that optimism so that you have satisfaction in your life and your work and have joy. And so it's a little bit deeper in that emotional component. Does that answer your question, Allegra?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good. So if you're ever interested, just let us know, because it's a fantastic tool. It's very illuminating. I'll say that. Even when I took it, I was very surprised at the outcome. It definitely is a developmental tool. And that's the difference too. It encourages you to develop your skills and grow. It's very interesting. So yeah, if you ever want to take it, just reach out, let us know.
We have a question from Carolina.
Yes.
Yes. Hi. First of all, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very insightful. And my question might be a little sensitive for some people, but for example, if any conflict involves a particularly sensitive topic like religion or politics, how might you be able to address something like that on the individual or group level, especially if, say, for example, the vaccine mandates, there was a lot of controversy on both sides of the aisle?
Yes, understand. We do have facilitators who are highly skilled in facilitating sensitive topics. Anthony, that you met Monday, is a fantastic facilitator in community discussions and with race talks. I don't know if he mentioned that, but he is just like powerful facilitator in those areas. So yes, we are able to navigate some of those more challenging, sensitive topics. What we also sometimes do is we may partner with our colleagues in civil rights when there may be issues that are more sensitive in nature, because they are what I would consider the subject matter experts. If there are issues around gender or race, or especially with the vaccine, they are leading some of those conversations, especially the folks that are in diversity and inclusion and equity, that group with Berlinda. So I might not lead a conversation on that, but I would love to partner with them, because our facilitation skills and their subject matter expert skills, sometimes we partner together and we make like a really good team when there are sensitive topics like that, where there are listening sessions and conversations that need to be had. We'll come together and work through some of those conversations. So yes, we're here to help, but we'll sometimes partner together. Does that help answer your question?
It does perfectly. Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you for that question.
And we'll take Joe as the last question.
Sure.
All right. Excuse me. So if I heard correctly during the presentation, did you mention grievances? Is that part of the department?
Okay, so we will help facilitate or mediate should there be a grievance that is filed. Now, it's not filed with our group. It would be filed with the union, or it could be filed with human resources. But should there be a grievance, we could still be a resource that helps mediate or facilitate resolution of that grievance.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure like where the department fit in, with the grievance aspect. So okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. But you would file that with your union rep or with your HR folks, depending on whether it's negotiated or administrative. You would file that with with the appropriate person. But then you could use us to help resolve it. Yeah.
Okay.
As a tool.
Makes sense.
Yeah. To help answer.
Yeah. I was just curious. I don't have any grievances or anything.
No. Yeah.
I was just curious where it fit in that realm. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, sure, of course. And like if an EEO complaint were to ever, come into mind, that's a civil rights thing. But the interesting thing with ADR and with CMPC is that we are a tool that can be utilized in any of those areas. Because mediation or facilitation or any of those ADR techniques are used in any of those areas, like, union grievances or civil rights EEO complaints, those type of things. We are the tool that helps with resolution, right? So they'll bring us in as that, as the mediator, right?
Okay.
But the actual function of a grievance or EEO complaint doesn't happen within our shop. We're the tool that helps resolve those things and the other shops. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay, good. Sounds good. I know I'm a little over time. I'm sorry.
You're good. Thank you. So thank you so much, Linda. That was great, important information and such great resource for all of our RAs who are about to join the Forest Service. Thank you so much for your presentation. And there was some interest about the resources you mentioned. I'll talk to you about it after this call, and we'll share out those resources.
Absolutely. Feel free to reach out, and I'm happy to provide ways to get to those resources as well. Yeah, anytime. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Linda.
Thank you so much as well.